hope you are doing well. Welcome to the New Age Comics Podcast. My name is Chase, and I will begin this episode off by just saying, finally on time! Yes, I've been super behind on this show for 3 weeks. 3 weeks now. And this will be my first recording within the week that the comics came out. Hopefully it gets released before this upcoming Wednesday. But that all being said, I have had a very busy week, clearly, because if you are a regular on the show, you're probably asking yourself, didn't we just get an episode? What is this turnaround? Well, a lot of things have happened. My life has been, as usual, a dumpster fire, as I've referred to it many times on this show before. And I might have actually mentioned this in the last episode, but essentially, I got laid off of one of my jobs, is how I would put it. I didn't get laid off, technically. I was an intern. However, that job was time-consuming, so now I am not going to my radio job that I have here in my city, and I have all this extra free time. For instance, I am recording this episode, this is almost an aside, but I'm recording this episode at 3 a.m. It is 3 a.m. I've tweeted about this, so if you follow me on Twitter, you'll notice that. But I can't believe I'm actually here recording this on my campus this late, or should I say this early? But I guess here we are. Never say I'm not dedicated to this show, please, because I'm frankly killing myself over here. But anyway, this week has been a total hectic mess. I just put out the last week's comics just the other day, and I actually read all the new comics in a couple hours, really, and then just got everything ready, and boom, here I am again. So wonderful. We are on time. But for those of you that are new here, maybe if there are some of you, here on this show, I pretty much have 3 parts. I'll do a kind of what's going on segment where I just talk about some topical comic news. And then I get into some comic reviews for this week. I will be talking about comics that came out on the 18th. And that's broken down into one top 5 little ranking of the week, and then a rapid fire section of everything else that I don't get to talk about. And then a post show where I basically talk about what's coming out next week. Yes, it's all very fun. If you like the show and you would like to support, go ahead and follow me on whatever you are listening to me on and leave a comment letting me know what your favorite comic of the week was. I would really like to know how my favorite squares against yours. Lastly, you can go follow me over on Twitter, like I've kind of mentioned, at New Age Comics Pod, or you can find me on any other podcasting apps or YouTube if you are not on there. It also bears repeating that I am spoiling all the comics that I will be talking about this week. So no comic is safe. If I want to spoil it, bam, it'll get spoiled. So if you haven't read books from this last week, from the 18th of November, 2020, go read them, because I don't want to be the reason that you can't enjoy the book fully, okay? But with that all being said, I actually have a really interesting piece of comic news to talk about here.
Now look, I want the real story.
Okay, so I will not bury the lead. Franklin Richards of the Fantastic Four lineage, the clan, he is no longer a mutant in Marvel canon. Explosion, oh my God, riots in the streets. I know, that's how Twitter reacted this last Wednesday. But this was revealed in Fantastic Four issue 26. That was the bomb drop. And so I'll get into the reason, first of all. I'm not currently reading the Fantastic Four run, so this is all extraneous information that I gathered. But essentially, Franklin attempts to use one of the Krakoan gates at the end of the newest Fantastic Four issue, and he wants to go visit the X-Men, being that he has long been considered the most powerful Omega-level mutant, because if you don't know, his power is that he can create and destroy universes, like universal meta manipulation, essentially. And he attempts to enter this gate and discovers he is no longer a mutant because Professor X appears telepathically and essentially explains to Franklin that his mutant status was actually just an illusion this whole time. Talk about a retcon, am I right? That as a young boy, He dreamed of being special, and so he subconsciously altered reality, given his power, to make himself a mutant. Now, Dan Slott is the writer of the current Fantastic Four run, which I actually was reading way back in the day, way before I was here broadcasting to you all. And I dropped out after about 6 or 7 issues or something, pretty much after the Thing wedding. I liked the first issue a lot, but then it kind of, for me, just kind of degraded. But that all being said, Dan Slott, he is taking lots of criticism for all of this. And it's not helpful that he has had some gas thrown onto the flame, given a recent appearance in a Marvel 616 show, which is like a docu-series about creators behind the comics. And it kind of just goes deep into the process of how comics are made. And it was a little, I guess, I don't know what to say. It was a little poking fun at Dan Slott's writing process, which that is what people have begun to criticize him about. Apparently, he is not someone who is fun to work with. But I don't know, like there is a whole thing to it, but I guess he's really late on a lot of deadlines. Him being bad at hitting deadlines is actually tough on a lot of people, pretty much everyone involved in the book, namely the letterer. He said one time he had to letter a comic in 15 minutes, which is absolutely crazy to conceive. And I think it just kind of contributed to an overall negative image that Dan Slott has garnered, which he is very, very vocal on the internet. I have seen some of his tweets from here and there. He's very famous for tweeting and blocking people. And so this kind of all added to his public persona as a very controversial figure. But back to the whole Franklin Richards story, Dan Slott, he tweeted about it, addressing it, saying, and I quote here, "Marvel Comics is serialized storytelling. Every issue is a character in an ongoing tale. The story is always evolving and building. If characters keep standing on solid ground, things get predictable. Quote, what just happened is what gets readers, quote, what's going to happen next?" And I guess that just begs the question, well, what the hell is going to happen here? I mean, that tweet gives me the impression, I guess, that he is thinking of essentially reverting this like retcon at some point, basically doing the cop-out, like, keep reading, it's a part of an ongoing story. Kind of like the Tom King, Catwoman, Batman wedding. So I respect Dan Slott's decision to essentially defend it in this way. I think that is the really only way this can go. And really, for my take on this whole mutant retconning business, personally, I am not too bent out of shape about it. One, I'm not a big FF fan. Frankly, it's one of those series or teams that I'm honestly not that into. I have attempted to get into FF before, and it's never been my thing. So honestly, I don't know if I'm the person that's going to care. But that all being said, I also don't really see why people are so upset. Frankly, X fans. I don't get why X fans are that upset. Just because when has Franklin Richards ever been like a substantial component of the mutant canon? He really hasn't. I mean, yeah, you could say like Days of Future Past, right? He was like a main character back then. And I don't know, I suppose I'm not privy to all the X canon and all the Fantastic Four canon. Maybe he has played a substantial role. I know they did an X-Men Fantastic Four miniseries a little while back exploring this exact idea. But basically, I'm just saying, I don't think him not technically being a mutant isn't going to change much. He already wasn't involved in Dawn of X. And I mean, it's not like his mutant status like gives him any character points throughout Fantastic Four, at least in my opinion. I haven't been reading it, and like I have said, I'm not a huge FF guy, but that's my take on this whole situation. I think it's one of those things where Dan Slott probably knew he was going to get flack for all of this, probably just wasn't ready for the amount of flack that he was going to get. And I think the only reason he might have gotten as much as he did was because I think people are pretty used to criticizing and shitting on Dan Slott, for maybe better or for worse. But I guess that's my take on it. All right, now we can get into some of the books that came out this last week. Just to recap the format, I'm doing a rapid fire round and then into the top 5. I don't have a ton of comics to rapid fire go through this week, but This week was amazing, so had a lot of hard choices. Let's kick off with Immortal Hulk issue number 40. This issue damn near made my top 5. There's a lot of awesome moments throughout here. Here we're falling out of the last leader arc thing. We get to see Hulk in some pretty compromising positions, I guess is one way to put it. There's a really heart-wrenching scene with Hulk crying. That always makes me cry. And then lastly, at the end here, we get some Joe Fix-It action, which I honestly think the next issue of this series, Immortal Hulk 41, is going to be a top 5 contender, and you will know why if you read this book and you read the ending. Next, getting into Dark Knight's Death Metal issue number 5. I did really like this issue. I thought it was a lot of fun, as the Dark Knight's Death Metal comics usually go. It was abhorrently confusing, but I mean, you know, that's just how it is. Like, you almost can't even call it confusion anymore. It's just blissful ignorance. But the way that Schneider and Capullo set out this whole issue is they do a bunch of little mini stories, I guess. They have little breakers. I think there's 4 stories in here. And if I can sum up each one in a couple words, the first one, Castle Bat. The second story, Drink Me, finally ties in all the Luther and Lobo stuff. The third story, Eat Me, features some pretty epic shots, one of Superman and all the villainous Supermen floating above Earth, giving it one last glance. And the last story, The Great Beginning. I think we are expecting a war in the next issue, and that's probably an understatement, frankly. But Dark Knight's Death Metal has been a total blast, so definitely check it out if you are into just mind-bending, face-melting comics. I picked up Juggernaut issue number 3 this week, and I did not regret it. I have been really into this Juggernaut series. I'll pretty much read anything Ron Garney. I love his art to death. And we get some pretty cool stuff in this issue. We get to see how the lawsuit for like $25 million is turning out. It results in a huge epic battle in the city streets. We also get to see how Jug, or Kane, acquired the new Sidorak armor, which was probably one of my favorite sequences of the book so far. And cool thing, in the next issue, it looks like Juggernaut's going to be fighting some Nazis, so I can't wait for that. And lastly, and I'm giving this my honorable mention, Venom issue number 30. I was a fan of the Venom Beyond arc, which is the finale in this issue. This arc was just such a blast. We get to see Eddie and Dylan go over back to the Ultimate Universe of all places. Like, if there's anything Cates doesn't need to do, it's dip his fingers into more universes, because he's just going to take them over, as he did in this arc. It was pretty hard not to throw this one in the top 5. There's some really great scenes here, explicitly the scene where Codex and Dylan touch hands and fuse memories. It's actually a really heartwarming scene. And we also get a time skip at the end of this issue, which is kind of nuts. You don't see a lot of those, especially this level of one. It was a 1-year time skip. In modern serial comics, you don't really see that often. But like I said, it's the end of the Venom Beyond arc, so they're headed back to 616, or Earth Prime, as they say in this issue. I'm not sure what the difference there is. But that all being said, where did all the stars go? Bum, bum, bum. King in Black next fucking month, guys. Or, damn, is it like next week, 2 weeks from now? I am shitting myself. I cannot wait for King in Black. God is coming. Noel is coming. All right, I went and got some water. I calmed the fuck down. But Noel, just so you guys know, Noel is coming. But anyway, now we can get into the top 5 of this last week. Like I said, this last week was fucking amazing. Like, it was really hard to put together a top 5 for this week. I swear. Like I already said, 2 of the comics in the rapid fire almost made it into the top 5. It was near impossible to sort all of these comics in a comprehensive order. But regardless, I'll give you what I got. I'll give you what I settled on. Kicking off with Widowmaker's issue number 1 for my number 5 spot this week. It is written by Devin Grayson, drawn by Michelle Bandini, and colors by Eric Arciniega. So I was actually pretty hype for this issue. The Black Widow-verse at Marvel is actually going pretty strong right now, given the movie coming out, obviously, which hasn't come out yet. But like, we have the Taskmaster series that just dropped last week. I loved that issue. I gave it my number 1 for last week. If you're curious, go check it out. And then we got the current Black Widow series, which has been really good. And now we have Redguard and Yelena Belova in their own series called Widowmakers, obviously. Plus, fun fact, Devin Grayson actually created Yelena back in '99 in a Black Widow mini. So I think it's pretty cool that Devin Grayson is back writing a character that she made. I just love that. And I thought this issue was actually a really good issue to hook you in. One thing I love about this comic that Devin Grayson does is she breathes in so much like individuality into all of these like new but old characters. And I say that meaning characters that are not used to the solo series treatment. Whether or not this is the first Yelena or Red Guardian series for that matter, like these are relatively unknown characters, and Devin Grayson does a great job in this issue kind of defining them just like personally. Like we really get to know both of these characters in the issue. Yelena is kind of the main here, but we get to know her through her acceptance of a job, essentially, to extract this guy from a prison. That's kind of the lead-in for this comic. She goes to this prison. It's in Antarctica. It's this like shield base thing. And she essentially comes to learn that it's like a super soldier lab. And she fights her way through the lab just to kind of then further figure out that this was all a farce and they were only sending her there to test out the effectiveness of the super soldiers against someone that was trained by the Red Room. Luckily for her, she actually encounters the Red Guardian in the prison, like he's just locked up in one of the little cells. And then I'll let you guys imagine how they just fuck everything up. They fuck shit up super hard, and it's really good. But I really liked this comic. Like, one, I have to say, this comic is very Russian. So if you're Russian, or if you like Russians, or like Russian culture, I suppose, this will be your comic, because they actually make a lot of references to just the motherland here. And they actually have some really cool attention to detail. Like, Yelena doesn't speak perfect English throughout this issue. I mean, like, there is this like mocking of like English Russian. I will not attempt an accent, but she actually speaks in that way throughout the issue in her monologue here whenever she's speaking in English, which is, I think, just really neat attention to detail. It reminds me of the Shang-Chi series, which has like played with translation and language as a component of the story. Further on the whole Russian thing, the Red Guard, he actually talks a little bit of history about Russia, and it's actually a really dope quote. I will read it here. He's talking with Yelena just about Russia, essentially. And he says, "You're too young to remember the glory of Stalin. I don't blame you for failing to understand the privilege of serving your state. For you yourself have never been served." Which, regardless of essentially what that means, I am not a Russian history buff, but I think it's really cool that they are even playing with like generationality in Russia, because I'm sure that's a component of Russian life every day, is just, you know, older people having a different perspective on life. And that's exactly what Devin Grayson captures in that little conversation. So hats off to her for that. That was just a great scene. And it's honestly kind of interesting seeing Russia embraced so much in Russian culture, given the current U.S. and Russian relationship. It's just tense at the moment, obviously. And so that was just like an interesting, I guess you could say, layer to reading this issue. But like I was talking about earlier, there's a lot of really good character building in this issue. Like, you don't have to really know anything about these two characters to get into it. I barely knew much. Yelena's whole thing in this comic is that she does not like the 1%, i.e. cheaters, as she kind of goes through this monologue of there's people in this world who cheat and take advantage, and those people control like all of the power and all of the wealth. Essentially the 1%. And I mean, like, hell yes, I love that. That's some fucking awesome shit. And just a really kind of relatable or personable quality to have for a main character. But then there's even like a little humbling, I guess, kind of character moment here when someone makes a comment to her about being the Black Widow that, quote, no one cares about. And I mean, they didn't express a huge amount of sadness from her in that scene, but it's just like another little like breadcrumb, I guess you could say, for what her character kind of just feels like from day to day. So lots of awesome little touches in this comic that I was just cheesing over. And lastly, Redguard was cheesing himself. He wanted Nat to come rescue him, which was kind of a cute little scene. He is her ex-husband, I guess, in the comic canon. Very much not in the movie canon. Maybe it is. I don't know. The movie hasn't came out yet. But these are all good little details in the comic. And that all being said, Red Guard survived the explosion at the end of this comic. I didn't get too much into how that happens, but there's a huge explosion. Essentially, Yelena, I think, thinks she left him for dead, and he did not die, and he's pissed. So I hope these two continue to fuck shit up. One comment is that on the cover here, Red Guardian is clean shaven, beardless, but in the comic, he has a beard. So I'm wondering, maybe is that going to be like the intro to the next comic, right? Him like shaving or something with a straight razor, of course, be the most Russian thing. But those are kind of my thoughts on this issue. I can't wait to see Yelena take down the 1% if she ends up doing that. And I really do wonder if Nat is going to tie in at all. I mean, like, she's gotta, come on. It's Black Widow, a Black Widow series. She's on the cover here. So I think we're going to end up seeing her later, and I'm pretty hyped for it. I am giving the number 4 spot, is that the copper medal? I think there's the gold, the silver, the bronze, the copper, the magnesium medal. I don't know. I'm giving the 4th spot to Batman issue 103, written by James Tynion, drawn by Guillaume March and Carlo Pagulian, colors by David Barron. So this comic was just fun as hell. This is continuing the Ghost Stories arc that is all about this Ghostmaker nerd guy. And like I said, just classic Bat fun. You get a big ass fight with some exposition. So I mean, could you ask for anything else? And that exposition is a really cool payoff. It is furthering the story and canon of Ghostmaker kind of studying alongside Bruce during his young adolescence time when he was off training and becoming the Bat, as you could say. And I just love how Tynion is kind of like extrapolating his character off of that period in Bruce's life. So smart. Like, that's a part of Bruce's life that I think we only get to vicariously experience through Batman Begins. At least I haven't read a lot of comics where they delve into what exactly he was training and what he was doing. I'm sure there's some run that goes in depth into it, but I love that we're getting a new character out of it. Very well played, Mr. Tiny Onion. But this issue, like I said, is essentially just a duke fest, a duking out fest between Batman and the Ghostmaker. Ghostmaker tries to, sauce on Batman in a couple ways. He does the whole like, oh, you're Batman, you're badass. You have all these like crimes that you're solving all at once. Well, I just solved like 10 of your problems and I did it faster than you. So clearly I am superior. And it kind of backfires, funny enough, on Ghostmaker later. He does 3 things. He puts away a bunch of corrupt politicians. He finds a serial killer and puts him away. And then he helps seize like a bunch of guns coming into Gotham illegally. And later, after Ghostmaker has bragged about it a good amount, Batman comes back at him and says that the politicians that he had put away, Bruce was monitoring them so he could end up putting away the mob that had their thumb on them. So Batman 1, Ghostmaker 0. Then 2, he said he was tracking the serial killer extensively, trying to string him to every murder. So boom, Batman 2, Ghostmaker 0. And then lastly, he says he pretty much replaced all the bullets in the guns that showed up. So none of them were going to work and they were all going to get caught. Anyway, so Ghostmaker, you fucked up on this one. At one point in the issue, they end up in Harley's apartment and Clown Hunter is there and he's trying to kill her, of course. He's trying to kill anything that looks like a clown. And she does not let that happen. She actually kicks his ass and ends up stepping on him, which was a little too horny for me. I wasn't expecting some of that. I kid. Obviously, I don't think Tynion was being horny when he was writing that. Maybe he was a little bit. But then Ghostmaker, he ends up taking the fight into Harley's apartment and then kind of just trank darts everybody. And they're all out cold. And now he's like claiming Gotham, essentially. Like he's like, all right, now I'm taking over. Quite the badass issue. Ghostmaker is quite the badass and he kicks everybody's ass. I loved all that shit. Tynion is really hammering the like you failed plot points at Batman, like with Joker War and the whole, I don't know, Dark Designs thing. That has all been kind of centered on like Batman, you aren't as cool as you think you are. And I like all that because it makes Batman a little more human again. You know, he's not the plot armor machine that he usually is. And Ghostmaker poses the question in this comic, like, is Batman too emotional? Part of me wants to say, well, sure. But then part of me kind of feels no, because that's the whole Bat family critique of Batman, right? That he's too cold. He's not fatherly enough. So it's almost like damned if he doesn't, damned if he does, I guess. I don't know. Maybe you could sound off in the comments. Is Batman too emotional? I want to hear your thoughts. There's also a neat scene in here where Harley kind of puts the last nail in the coffin, declaring that she is trying to be good. And when I say Harley, maybe I mean Tinian is putting the last nail in the coffin, declaring Harley one of the good guys. And I really did dig that scene. So yeah, nothing special, no crazy bells and whistles. This issue was just fun as hell. Okay, we're getting into the bronze medal this week. I know that one. And we're going to be talking about a lot of metal here because this is my combo thing that I've done every single time now, and I'm combining all the XoS comics into this one slot. So I'm giving the bronze medal to these 3 comics equally. This is XoS week 9. I'll run through the credits here really fast. We got X-Force number 14, written by Gary Duggan and Benjamin Percy, drawn by Joshua Cassara, and colors by Guru FX. Hellions issue number 6, written by Zeb Wells, drawn by Carmen Caniro, and colors by David Curiel. And lastly, Cable issue number 6, written by Gary Duggan and art by Phil Noto. Whew. Okay, this time, I promise I'm not gonna rant, okay? I'm not ranting. In fact, these XoS issues I thought were actually really good. This might be, and I'm saying it here, this might be the strongest week of XoS that we've gotten since the beginning, since, I don't even know, I guess you could say the week that had that Wolverine X-Force back-to-back. That was my favorite week, hands down, so far. But now, I think it's this week, and you'll find out why. Let's start with X-Force. This is part 17 of 24, okay? And just a reminder, the score is Aurico 5, Krakoa 2. And this issue is a super duper fast paced issue with tons and tons of challenges. It's kind of the point of this issue is just to run through a ton of challenges really quickly. Maybe you could say that's a critique of the event, but all in all, this issue itself was very fun. We start with a rematch of Pogger Pog and Magic. Magic wins, essentially debunking Pogger because she finds out that Pog means sword. So therefore, the alligator outfit was the sword, right? It's this whole meta thing, but she gets eaten by Pogger Pog, but kicks out the guy that's controlling him and wins. So boom, we got Aurico 5, Krakoa 3. We made up a point, guys. Then we hop into a splash page of a bunch of challenges. They each get their own little panel. Krakoa, I won't bury the lead. Krakoa gets their asses kicked on this page. There's 9 challenges, and we only win 2 of them. It was the eating and the puzzle contest of all contests. I thought we'd at least win the dancing contest, but we end off with Aurico 12, Krakoa 5. So we're not doing hot anymore. We're getting doubled here. The next challenge, Captain Avalon. He loses a race in the Crooked Market. We're at Aurico 13, Krakoa 5. Magic then misspells magic in her challenge. She uses a K. She spells her own name, not the word magic. So we lost that point. Aurico 14, Krakoa 5. And then perhaps the darkest challenge of them all, Logan and White Sword. They have to look into a mirror and look at all the faces of those that they've killed. And they cannot look away or blink. Logan reluctantly loses because he's crying. And now I'm crying. So Aurico 15, Krakoa 5. But that crying turns to laughter because Gorgon cannot resist the siren song and wants to go fuck a boulder. So boom, Aurico 16, Krakoa 5. War from the opposing side then kills a kitten because Captain Avalon did not want to kill a kitten. And so now we're at Aurico 17, Krakoa 5. Might be the most hilarious challenge. And then the last challenge. I think this is what the whole issue definitely led up to. Anubis versus Storm. A dance, you could say, right? If you refer to that one Marauders issue. And this is seriously one of the most badass fights of the whole event. They completely duke it out. Storm, I'll say Storm stabs the shit out of Anubis. And they're fighting in the like vampire place in Avalon or wherever the hell they're at in the other world. And essentially when she stabs him, his blood flies everywhere, and all these vampires can't resist, I suppose, and they just hop in and just eat him to death. And Storm says, have a taste, which, wow, that's pretty badass. But now we are at Aurico 17, Krakoa 6. We're making up points, guys. And that's actually the end of that issue. So moving into Hellions issue number 6, I will say this is kind of a side plot comic. I'm very pleased with this comic nonetheless. It features the Mr. Sinister crew. We got to see them in the last Hellions issue. And they want to essentially halt the competition from happening in general by stealing the Aurico side's swords. Unfortunately, though, that ship has sailed at this point, clearly. I spent the whole last couple minutes talking about several sword fights, so they can't prevent the challenge from going on anymore. That all being said, though, this issue is really good. It's probably the least X of Swords issue like that we've had, but it's still very dope. Sinister essentially gets the entire Hellions team killed in this issue by being an ass, and he insists on stealing some Aurico mutant DNA, and that's essentially what spawns the whole event that gets his whole crew killed. The team encounters essentially like an Auricoan, right? Krakoan, Auricoan. An Auricoan Mr. Sinister, essentially a geneticist, the longest way for me to say that. And his mutants nearly kill every single Hellion, including Sinister, actually. I think the real Sinister, I'm pretty sure there's some clone shit going on, but then the real Sinister comes and finishes the job insanely enough. And he whacks Havoc and Psylocke and Grey Crow. And whew, yeah, this issue was just really dope. But it was weirdly like fucked up to watch everybody die like that. And I only kind of shouted out the dudes at the end there. The whole other crew gets killed in that whole scuffle. In a weird way, it's disturbing. But honestly, I kind of want to catch up on this Hellions series. I really liked it. So, maybe I'm going to have to like shout out to Ian and we can do it on a New Age of X tip. But I digress. Moving into Cable, issue number 6. Guys. This is probably the best issue of the whole event, okay? The whole event so far. I mean, we have one more week, but this might be my favorite issue that's came out so far. As a reminder, okay, we're at Aurico 17, Krakoa 6, okay? And this issue has 2 battles in it. One, Cable versus Bay, who is Cypher's Bay, funny enough. And then we have Gorgon versus White Sword in the second half. And oh my fucking God, guys. Like, both of these fights were so chilling, but for different reasons, funny enough. Cable reluctantly loses his fight, essentially because he hesitates to kill Bay. He has her on the ground, he has the kill strike, and he hesitates to do it because essentially Cypher is standing literally right there. I don't know why the X-Men preferred that Cypher witness his wife's duel, but he chooses not to kill Bay, and she actually breaks his arm and almost kills him, if not for Cypher's intervention. And we get one of the most chilling lines ever. I tweeted about this line. It was so good. Cable is distraught after losing that. And he sits down. He's telepathically communicating with Cyclops, his father. And he basically just says, I wasn't ready, Dad. I should have been the other guy for this. Things would be different. And that line like hit. That line hit really hard. It was just so like, I don't want to say sad because it wasn't sad, but it is really sad. I think that's one of those like perfect lines that Duggan has sprinkled in where we all kind of can relate to that. Like, we all want to be the other guy. You know what I mean? And I thought that was just so amazing. And the thing is, though, guys, that is like an amazing writing moment, but the fight in the next battle will rock your shit off, okay? So we get into Gorgon versus White Sword. I think this was the fight everybody was really looking forward to, just Gorgon's fight in general. And holy fuck. Okay, so White Sword sits down and he starts summoning dudes, which is super unfair. But he starts summoning like 100 guys. Gorgon is just dicing them left and right. It is so fucking cool. Like, this sequence is so dope and it's so intense. Like, it's, I don't know, I use this term movie mode. It's like when you're reading a comic and you end up feeling like you're completely immersed in the story and you're watching a movie. That's how this comic felt. Very movie mode here at the end. Gorgon, he cuts one guy's head off. He kills 2 more guys. Then he pulls off the mask, and so he starts turning everybody to stone. And oh my God, it's so nuts. This guy hops up onto him and like stabs him in the eyes with his fingers. And now Gorgon is just bloody-eyed. Obviously, he's used to kind of operating blind. And then this is when Whitesword sends like the whole army. Gorgon does not let up. He is killing so many people that they actually cut to Saturnine, and she is counting up each kill as 1 point. And so Gorgon has now actually taken the lead for Krakoa. He hit 19, and so now it's Krakoa 19, Aurico 18. War gets all mad at Whitesword, so he basically halts this whole battle. And Gorgon, he is not doing good. Whitesword walks up to Gorgon, and he tells him that he is going to kill him and resurrect him as one of his servants. And Gorgon is so badass, dude. He says, "I walk my own path." And Whitesword says, "I could impose my will." And he just says, "Not over me." Oh my God. Like, holy shit. This comic was so fucking good. And I mean, he kills Gorgon right there. Spoiler warning. And now we're at Aurico 19, Krakoa 19. That is my brain right now. That comic, like, if not for me bunching all comics, all the XoS comics together, I think Cable 6 would have taken number 1. And this is what I mean. This week was so difficult to sort all these comics. They were all so good. But this last Cable issue was breathtaking. Like fucking breathtaking. You gotta read this issue. Like, if you're into XoS, and maybe if you dropped out of XoS, hop back in just for Cable, or fuck it, just skip to Cable 6. It's so good. So, I mean, I've said enough. This all ends next week. XoS ends next week, and I mean, I'm shitting myself just thinking about it. So we'll have to wait and see how it ends. But that all being said, X fans, I will see you on the other side. Okay, getting into, honestly, a bit of a different comic here. We're talking about Rorschach issue number 2 for my second place spot this week. This is written by Tom King and drawn by Jorge Fornes, colors by Dave Stewart. Okay, this series has been really good. The first issue left me really hungry and horny for the next issue because I don't even know. I mean, I feel like everybody read this fucking first issue. It was just phenomenal. But before I recap all of that, let me just add that the ink splatter here in the beginning, it's getting bigger. I pointed it out last time. Very, very interested to see how that evolves, I suppose. But I will try to stay out of the weeds of the last issue a little bit just because it sets up so much. But essentially, someone has attempted to assassinate the president-elect, which is President-elect Turley. And they were in a Rorschach outfit with a girl in a cowgirl outfit. The guy was like 80, and based off of some DNA testing fuckery in the last issue, may or may not be the OG Rorschach. They tested his DNA against Walter Kovacs, and they might be certain that it is the actual Rorschach. But here, the detective who is on the case of figuring out just what the hell is going on, he's digging through this guy who is supposedly William Myerson. He's in this Watchmen world. He is a famed pirate comic writer, and he is kind of just looking through his apartment, and we learn the story throughout this issue of one of this Rorschach's recent kills. We see a series of interviews from this detective, one where he talks to Myerson's neighbor, who he actually went on a date with back in the day, then the hotel manager, who helped him with like this strange incident at one time, and then this other neighbor who actually switched apartments with the previously mentioned woman. And it all actually paints this really amazing story picture together of Myerson essentially being rejected by this girl he lived next to. Eventually she gets married and her husband starts teasing him, and I guess this goes on for decades, bullying, fucking with him pretty much nonstop. And eventually he kicks Myerson's ass at a very old age, like not in the first 10 years or first year of them meeting, like in 50 years later. And he kicks his ass when he's like 80 or 90. And then Meyerson essentially gets revenge on this dude for kicking his ass and kills him in his apartment in front of his wife, who is this girl he went on a date with once. We learned this all pieced together through several interviews, and it's an amazingly paced story, I have to say. Like, this issue stands as a true, I guess you could say, noir issue from front to back, because we learn all these things incrementally, and then there's also a lot of clue finding throughout this issue on the detective's part, and it's just a really great read to kind of just fall into this noir world. There are definitely moments when I actually forget that this is supposed to be like a Watchmen story. They reference the squid explosion or incident, and they also reference Manhattan in this issue once or twice, and that kind of just caught me off guard. But I have to ultimately just give a big shout out to the artist here, Jorge Fornes. He is a stunning, stunning artist, like so perfect for this story. I've been reading him on the recent Daredevil run. He worked with Tom King on Batman a little bit, and he's just phenomenal. He is just a phenomenal artist, and he's definitely one of those artists who can embrace the 9-panel grid super well, and that, obviously works well for a Watchmen story and works well for Tom King. So I could not be happier with another artist. And interestingly enough, on the art, there is this kind of moment where the detective is looking through this guy's studio, his comic studio, and he's looking at some of his penciled comic pages. And it's really cool because, they do the whole setup and everything, where at the top it says like project title, issue, page number. It's like the manila white paper, right? It's the whole kit and caboodle. And the story is really strange, though. It's about this guy called the Citizen. Essentially, he looks like Rorschach. Maybe you could say the Question, because he has the smooth face instead of the ink blot. And he's fighting this like Nazi wolf guy who's called the Unthinker. I think there's a lot of nuance going on here, but I love the way it's laid out. It looks really, really cool. And I think we're going to have to watch that little story blip for more meaning down the line. It's going to be one of those Watchmen-esque moments where we don't get it now, but we're going to get it down the line. Another Watchmen-esque moment is when the detective is speaking with this girl who went on that date with Meyerson, and she recalls that he once said that he wanted to start working on more mature things in terms of comic work. And she asks, did he ever do something more mature? Which, yeah, because not only did he kill your husband, unbeknown to you, but he also attempted to assassinate the president-elect. So he definitely went on to do some more mature stuff. But my last note on this amazing comic is that the comic starts and ends with the same page layout of the detective entering and exiting the building. And it's such a cool page, both of them. It plays with like perspective and scale so much. It does my favorite thing in comics when the subject of the page, so the detective here, is actually just a small character walking on the street, because it's such a far back perspective. It's just wonderful. Definitely go look it up. I tweeted about those two pages, so you can go to my Twitter to check it out. But yeah, Rorschach 2 was phenomenal. I cannot wait for issue 3. All right, for my number one issue this last week. Oh gosh, it is 4 a.m. and I am getting the sweats. I am not doing good, but we're almost done here. Number one comic this last week, and I had to give it to this one, you guys. I had to give it to this one. Blade Runner 2019, issue number 12. I have done these credits numerous times, but one last time, and it won't be the last time, but one last time, written by Michael Green and Mike Johnson, drawn by Andres Guinaldo, colors by Marco Lesko. You know I had to give it to this issue. I pretty much said I was going to do it in the last episode before I'd even read the comic. But Blade Runner 2019 has easily become one of my favorite series of this past year. It's on issue 12, so it's been coming out for exactly a year. And I have to say it does not disappoint. It gives me everything that I desired. The last issue left us off with a fatty cliffhanger, a very big cliffhanger. Essentially, Ashina, our main here. If you haven't been reading this series, I can't recap it all. But Ashina, our main, she is standing there, arm's length, 6 feet social distanced from Selwyn, who also has 4 Hythes, which is his like Blade Runner bodyguard, and a lion. He has a replicant lion there. And That's where we left off in the last issue, and we pick up right there, and we pick up in chaos, okay? This scene, okay, this opening scene, I think it settles Ashina as probably one of the most badass comic characters of the year. She pretty much claps two Hythes in the first room. Hythe has given her this whole spiel, and she's just sick of hearing it, so she just starts shooting. She claps one of the Hythes that, like, jumps in front of Selwyn, so she tried to kill Selwyn just right then and there, and then she ends up shooting one of the other Hythes, so she took out two of them already, and in probably one of the most tense scenes ever, she has to kill this lion. And oh my, it's insane. She's like scrounging. The lion scratches her in the back, which she's like back braced up. And she's like crawling on the ground. She grabs this like metal shard and shoves it through him. Oh my God, it's totally nuts. Like once people started shooting, shit got very intense very quickly. And it was amazing. Guinaldo, he is just murdering every single panel. He's a phenomenal artist. This whole battle here kind of ends on the beach, which is very aesthetic, very movie mode. Meanwhile, this whole time, throughout this whole struggle, Ashina has been dealing with her back brace because Selwyn essentially created it, so he has like control over it through some tech stuff. And then Cleo and Isabel touch down, and this is when shit gets climactic, okay? So they are Selwyn's family, essentially. Cleo is his daughter, and Isabel is his wife, who is a replicant. And the whole entire story of Blade Runner 2019 has been Selwyn trying to reunite with his daughter, but it's because he wants to essentially let people experiment with her. And Ashina was not going to let that happen, thus this entire 12-parter. And Selwyn pretty much does the whole, like, oh, JK, like, JK, everything that just happened, let's just be a family, right? Like, when the villain gets their thing at the end. And Isabel walks up to him and does the whole romantic face touch and then just kills him right then and there. It's very poetic when you kind of take a look at it, right? This whole moment, he actually has now reunited with his family. He got everything he wanted, and then he actually is killed by his own replicant wife. Whew. Very poetic. An amazing ending to this arc. And as one of the Hythe like bots freaks out and tries to kill Isabel, the last remaining Hythe kills that Hythe. And so now there's just one Hythe. The Hythe who defected. That was a very cool scene. Hythe kind of does the whole like, all I want is freedom, and like walks away, which was a cool ending. And it wraps up rather quickly, but honestly, I think it was a great, quick little wrap up. Ash essentially refuses to go off-world with Cleo and Isabel because, you know, it's like LA is where she belongs, that kind of whole thing. So wow. Just wow. Like, this series was a 10 out of 10. Easily. Every single issue was so good. Reading it in serial format was just such an experience because every ending I was like, what? That's how every issue left me. I loved every single bit of this series. Like, this will make an amazing trade. I know this book is a little, you know, probably slept on, right? It's a Titans comics book. I'm sure some people are even surprised to hear that I gave it the coveted #1 spot. But here's the thing, guys. You thought it was over. Nah, it ain't over, because in January, it's actually, we only get a month hiatus because in January of next year, we're getting the next issue, next series rather, which is Blade Runner 2029. I am super duper hyped for that. I cannot wait. And yeah, what else is there to say? Like, this Blade Runner series is a perfect addition to the like Blade Runner canon. And it's honestly, I think, become one of my favorite comics that I've had the pleasure to read month by month coming out. So all praises to Blade Runner and the creative team and those at Titan Studios. They knocked it out of the park with this one. I loved this comic from head to toe. Please do yourself a favor and check it out. And that wraps up the show. Wow, it is 4:30 in the morning. I can't believe I'm fucking doing this and I'm awake. But hey, guess where we are, kids? The post show. What's coming out next week? Well, it's a fat bussy of a week. Okay. And yes, I wrote that into my notes. It's a fat bussy of a week. We're getting Action Comics issue 1027. I can't wait for that. Batman White Knight presents Harley Quinn number 2. I loved the first issue, so I can't wait for that follow-up. Daredevil issue number 24. God, this whole Daredevil run has just been phenomenal, so it's going to be great. Dark Knight's Death Metal, The Multiverse, Who Laughs? We're getting a Patton Oswalt story in that one, so I'm probably going to check it out. Detective Comics 1031, been loving detectives. Doctor Doom issue number 9. Doctor Doom, Christopher Cantwell, I can't wait. We're getting the ending of X of Swords, okay? Excalibur 15, X-Men 15, X of Swords Destruction number 1. Holy shit. We're also getting the end of the Falcon and Winter Soldier mini that has been coming out. We're getting issue number 5. So we're getting a lot of shit wrapping up next week. Justice League issue number 28. It's got to be good. I can't wait for that. Shang-Chi number 3, The Midway Point. Undiscovered Country number 10. We're hitting double digits with that one. And then Department of Truth number 3. That series has just been gorgeously amazing and terrifying. And lastly, this is a long build-up for this comic. XO Man of War, issue number 2 by Dennis Hopeless. Whew. This comic has been a long time coming. Like, I'm sure we got XO Man of War 1 pre-quarantine, guys. Pre-fucking quarantine. So this has been very long awaited. I can't wait to check that one out. And that is all I have for you guys today. Like I have expressed ad nauseum, it's so late or early in the morning that I am not even going to bother having some kind of elaborate blah, blah, blah outro. That shit is for the birds anyway. So if you made it this far, thank you. You are so kind for listening to this podular broadcast. I love doing this every week. It's so much fun. Talking about comics with like-minded comic fans. What more could I ask for? So that all being said, please, in the comment section, let me know what your favorite comic of the week is. I would really like to know. Was it Blade Runner 2019, issue number 12? Probably not, but that's what I'm saying. You gotta let me know what it was. And so that about does it for me, guys. Go ahead and follow me on whatever you're listening on if you are so inclined. And for this next week, do yourself a favor, give a comic book a read, and I think you'll have a better week. Okay, guys, well, this was a blast, and I will see you guys in the next one. All right, see ya. Bye.